Avram is recovering from circumcision. We learned that at the end of last week's Parsha at 90 years old. Oy. According to tradition, God appears to him at the beginning of this week's Parsha to do Bikor Cholim. God appears to Avram, and according to many, that is the substance of the revelation. There are no words spoken, probably a good reminder for us that when we visit those who are sick, when we visit those who are in mourning or in pain, there usually are very few words that we can offer that will be of comfort, but it is our presence which is of comfort. According to tradition, Avram, the Torah says, is not sitting inside the tent. He is not sitting in bed in the shade, which is exactly where I would be if I had, well, anyways, you get the idea. He is sitting at Petach HaOhel. He's sitting at the entrance of the tent, and the Torah says, Kechol Mayom, in the heat of the day, waiting, hoping for strangers to pass by. And when they do, he tells God, according to tradition, God, you wait here. I've got to go greet these strangers. Vayomar Adonai, my lords, imna matzati chen be'einecha, if I have found favor in your eyes, al na ta'avor me'al avdecha, a second time, please don't pass by your servant. The rabbis learn a lot of things from the way that Avraham behaves. First, from the fact that Avram rushes to greet guests even after God appeared to him. Rabbi Yehuda says that we can learn that hachnasat orchim, that greeting guests is even greater than welcoming the presence of God. We are not allowed in the Jewish tradition to ignore the needs of people who are right there in front of us for the purposes and pleasures of our own spiritual experience. We're not to let our desire for some supposedly greater spiritual meaning to close us off from the gift of the human face. This is one of the critiques of Kierkegaard's understanding of the Akedah. Kierkegaard praises Avraham for the Akedah, for being willing to suspend ethics and sacrifice Isaac, and people come along and say, no, you're paying attention to only the first part, but what about the second part? What about when God says, don't do this? And this wasn't just about Avraham, it was about Isaac. You can't sacrifice Isaac in order to have your own spiritual experience. That's for another Devar Torah. But Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, and we read this as part of our meditations after reciting the words of the blessing for Torah in the morning, Elu divrim ha'adam ochel perutehem ba'olam hazeh v'hakeren kayemet lo la'olam haba. Here's a list of things which we enjoy the fruits of them in this world. Literally, we eat the fruits of them in this world, and the principle remains for us in the world to come, and one of them is hachnasat orchim. And you might say to yourself, well, I don't understand. If I'm giving food away, how is it that I'm enjoying, that I'm eating more food in this world? But the rabbis say no. When we give food away, when we make room at our table, we are actually nourished not just in the future, but we get something out of it in this world. What do we get out of it? First, Avraham is in physical pain, but he does not allow his physical suffering to close himself off from the world. Sometimes the best response that we can have when we are suffering ourselves physically, ironically, is to help others. Because when we are helping others, it prevents us from becoming too self-centered, too focused on what is happening from us, and it pushes us to move beyond ourselves. When we welcome guests into our home, it helps us to find the courage to overcome the fear that we have of strangers, the fear that we have about the world outside, and even the shame that we may feel at our imperfect homes. The tradition is telling us you don't have to be rich and lavish and have a museum of a home to welcome guests. You have to have an open heart. And that is something that all of us can and should have. And that guests can be a source of wisdom. The rabbis say elsewhere, Ezu chacham halomed mikol adam, who's somebody who's wise when you learn from every person. And strangers give us the gift of a different perspective, and they give us the gift of surprise. And we should allow ourselves to be surprised, and we should accept the wisdom that comes from having people who are different from ourselves in our midst. Rabbi Jack Moline says, Avram considers guests to be enablers of right and proper conduct. He does not suggest that, Avram does not suggest that he's doing a favor for the guests, but instead says to them, please, please give me the opportunity to live up to my highest values. Please understand my next few words in the right way. I love the fact that we have a full Shabbos lunch every week. I'm grateful to the Fangmeyers who cared for our kitchen and fed us for so many years. I'm grateful to Chef Dory and her staff for their hard work and yummy food each week. Dory did something special for me. I asked her, could we have cholent? We have a little cholent for this week. Having a full lunch enables not only our congregation, but visitors from out of town, hungry college students, and sometimes people off of the street to come in and find nourishment and welcome. And I am proud each week that we donate our leftover food to urban ministries. This is especially important in this time as so many millions of Americans, to our disgrace and embarrassment, are becoming food insecure as SNAP benefits have gone away. And by having a full Shabbos lunch every week, we may be missing something or handicapping something in our communities. In many traditional communities where Jennifer and I lived in LA for several years, and in Jerusalem and other places, there was a snack, there was a small kiddush afterward, but it was complemented by an ethic of coming to shul with the proverbial Shabbos invitation in your pocket. You came to shul and you either knew that you had set an extra place at home, or said, if there's someone who needs a Shabbos invitation, I'll hurry home and we'll put a little more water in the soup, we'll set another place and have somebody at our table. And I don't want to replace our regular Shabbat lunches or occasional Friday night congregational dinners, but I want us not to lose sight of the importance of inviting guests into our homes, of sharing our homes with one another. Beth Goldstein and Susan Levine and Adam Schwartz and Sally Brown have spearheaded an initiative. It's going to continue on December 12th. We're going to focus on inviting new members of Bethel for an in-home Shabbat dinner, but we've already done more and we'll do others, but anyone can participate by hosting either on December 12th or any other time by inviting and attending a Shabbat dinner in one another's homes. As I mentioned at the beginning, the rabbis say the mitzvah of Hachnasat is orchim, of welcoming guests, is more important than communing with God. That doesn't mean, however, that God is not present when we host guests. At a deep level, when we welcome guests, Rabbi Joseph Ber Dov Soloveitchik says we are imitating God. I want to read you what he says. He says, the Almighty God is the great machnis orchim, the great welcomer of guests. God's hospitality made it possible for us to exist, for the world to come into being. To be means to share in the infinite being of God. The Almighty, like Abraham, invites people to partake of God's boundless existence, because anything that we own isn't really ours. Creation, he writes, is an act of hachnasat orchim. We are just strangers who God has invited into God's tent, which is the universe. How beautiful, he writes, is the doctrine of tzimtzum, of divine contraction. What is hachnasat orchim? What is welcoming guests, if not withdrawal by the master from a part of his home so that a stranger can occupy the empty part that the master vacates? When we leave a guest room in our home, when we leave a space at our Shabbos table, these are places where we experience God's presence in the world and where we can be reminded to live lives of courage, of love, and in doing so, we will enjoy the fruits not only in this world, but in the world to come as well. Shabbat Shalom.